Wonderful. So first we're going to hear from Chine McDonald, who is director of the think tank Thesis and author of the wonderful book God is Not a White Man, and who has a new book on motherhood, which is out very soon, I think, and which I'm hoping we might get a bit of a window in today. So Chine, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lois. Thank you for that. I'll put my stopwatch on. I'm director of the think tank Theos, and it's been really great to work with Lois on various things over the past 3 years since I've been a director there. My latest book, Unmaking Mary, Shattering the Myth of Perfect Motherhood, came out last month, actually, the 13th of March. So it's been out in the world for a couple of weeks. But what I want to speak about, let me see if I can. Oh, what have I done? Have I stopped sharing? Well, not. Look at the next one here.
Are they?
Hopefully you
Oh,
can
here they
see
come.
this. Here we go.
We see it now, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be talking about Black motherhood through the lens of the Black Madonna, and this is kind of one of the chapters that I explore in the book, and I've made a kind of recent BBC radio documentary about. So in this time, I want to introduce you to representations of motherhood that have, for most of history, been channeled through white depictions of the ideal mother, and show you how the concept of a Black Madonna, rather than the ultimate symbol of white motherhood, the Virgin Mary in the West, presents an alternative and often unseen vision of pregnancy and birthing. Now, I am coming at this conversation from the intersection between theology, gender, and race. I'm not an academic. I'm a kind of journalist, all-rounder, communicator, and lead a research think tank that is also just starting a big piece of research on motherhood. And in that space, I believe that the institution of motherhood and the ideal of motherhood, this kind of ideal standard of motherhood, is most vividly displayed in the ways in which Mary, the mother of Jesus, the most famous mother of all, has been constructed throughout Western art and history and culture and theology over the centuries. And in Mary, we can see the dominant ideals of motherhood that have been projected onto her and which shape our ideas about the maternal. But most of my motherhood feels far from the many paintings of Mary we see in European galleries. A serene, quiet, doting, caring mother, a woman with not a hair out of place, eyes fixed on her child, her skin is always porcelain white. And this white image of Mary has become the standard for mothers and the ideal for all women. So, in researching the book, I noted how almost all secular writers on the maternal experience at some point touch on Mary as the archetype of motherhood. The ideas about what it is to be a woman and a mother that infuse our societies have been shaped by what art historian Catherine McCormack describes as an avalanche of Christian devotional images of the Virgin Mary that define mothering as something sacrosanct, monumental, self-sacrificing, subservient, and desexualized. And here are some of these images that you might be familiar with if you were to visit European art galleries today. And in that description that Catherine McCormack gives, we see elements of the presentation of Black motherhood. So self-sacrificing and subservient. And we see this most vividly played out in the mammy myth of Black womanhood and motherhood, which I'll speak about shortly. But we also see ideas we do not see played out in symbolic representations of Black motherhood. The Black mother is the opposite of sacrosanct in Western culture and the opposite of desexualized. In the Jezebel or Sapphire trope of Black motherhood, we see hypersexualized and unholy women. We see this also in the focus on Black enslaved women's reproductive abilities during the period of slavery. Black women often faced sexual assault, rape, and abuse by their slave owners, and were frequently pregnant. Slavery depended on Black women supplying future slaves, and so they were, of course, encouraged to reproduce. The Jim Crow Museum states that slavers may have offered a new pig for each child born to an enslaved family. They may have bought a new dress for a new enslaved mother, as long as her child survived childbirth. Or maybe they were offered no work on Saturdays for those women who had more than 6 children. Young Black girls often had to have sex as anticipatory socialization for their soon-to-be adult status as breeders. There were magazines and periodicals that explained optimal conditions for enslaved women to reproduce. As one ex-slave said, women wasn't nothing but cattle. So it's into these negative perceptions of Black motherhood within a context in which white motherhood is perceived as the ideal that we see the Black Madonna enter the scene. Now, no one quite knows what exactly a Black Madonna is. There are a couple of examples here in these images, but the term is given to any image, statue, or painting in which Mary and Jesus are depicted with dark skin. Academics dispute whether they are actually black, as in deliberately designed to depict a woman of colour, or whether this blackness is symbolic of some other idea that has nothing to do with race, or indeed whether the blackness of the images and sculptures has any significance at all, whether they're just the colour of the wood. Whatever they are, there are thought to be at least 450 in Europe, with the majority of those found in France. Now, at various times and places, blackness has been associated with strangeness and death and evil. But at other times, the colour black has been associated with soil and fertility, and therefore new life, natality. Black Madonnas have long been popular figures in feminist and goddess spiritualities, and some of the greatest Black female activists have found themselves at the feet of Black Madonnas. The late Bell Hooks spoke about the freedom she found in the Black Madonna. Now, when I became a mother, I realised that I didn't conform to the image of motherhood I had in my head. For Black women in the UK, this reality is soon faced up to when one goes through maternity services, where Black women's bodies have been brutalised and stereotyped, and where Black women are more likely to die in childbirth than white women. Though artistic representations of motherhood and Mary have most often been white, the sheer fact is that Mary was a brown-skinned woman, a Palestinian Jewish woman. So there is something for me that is powerful in reclaiming her in the form of the black or brown-skinned Madonna, especially for Black women who have long felt excluded. The Black Madonna is a profound place of safety and welcome. Black Madonnas are surprising and intriguing because they don't fit in with the dominant image that we have of motherhood, in particular white motherhood, in our heads. And their non-conformity makes them also a useful lens through which to look at ways of mothering that also don't fit the archetype. Adoptive mothers, single mothers, older mothers, LGBTQI mothers. And for me, the Black Madonna's power is in her literal blackness, yes, but also in her association with the wretched mothers of the earth. In the 16th century, Our Lady of Guadalupe is believed to have visited the marginalized and oppressed native people of Mexico as one who was compassionately aware of their vulnerability. When I stand in front of Black Madonnas, as I did with these two Black Madonnas in France when I was making a documentary for the BBC, I connected with the experiences that have been integral to Black motherhood. Feelings of solidarity, of care, of safety, and of fierce protectiveness. Black motherhood, however, is a concept within Black communities This is not only confined to people who have given birth. The mothering of Black women extends to the mothering that is done by all women, friends and sisters and aunties and mothers and grandmothers. And this is an idea that's central to womanism, which is a feminist intellectual framework championed by Black feminists, which places anti-racism at its heart. And the term womanist originates from Alice Walker's 1983 essay collection In Search of Our Mother's Garden, Womanist Prose. And Dolores Williams describes the nature and role of mothering within this framework. And she writes, "For the womanist, mothering and nurturing are vitally important. Walker's womanist reality begins with mothers relating to their children and is characterized by Black women, not necessarily bearers of children, nurturing great numbers of Black people in the liberation struggle." And she's thinking there of people such as Harriet Tubman. I really valued how Jennifer Banks, in her book Natality, which I'm sure many of us have read, explored how author Toni Morrison framed her creativity and philosophy around her idea of natality within this womanist tradition. For her, we need to nurture ourselves and our creativity and others, but we are not distinct from the communities, often communities of women, that Black women have been nurtured by. In her book Tar Baby, she describes later the tar as the quality of women she had been nurtured by. The ability to hold something together that otherwise would fall apart. She talked about their ancient properties, their abilities to be both a ship and a safe harbour, to be daughters and mothers, accommodating women and independent women, women with a home life and women with careers, as Jennifer Banks writes. And this for me is what is beautiful about the Black Madonna. The texture that is so often lost in the one-dimensional presentation of motherhood, we find in the mystique and the intrigue and the variety of Black motherhood, Black Madonnas. And so too the Black Madonna's alignment with all people, all who are marginalised, whether they are mothers or not. And in so doing, the Black Madonna challenges the perfect and restrictive ideal of motherhood that's presented to us in the myth of Mary. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the mammy myth. In April last year, Kamala Harris had an awkward encounter on Drew Barrymore's show. Given the terrible state of the world, Drew Barrymore asked Kamala whether she could be the nation's momala, and she took her hands in hers and she looked kind of pleadingly in her eyes. Now, for many who understand the 500 years of history of misogynoir and strained relationships between white women and Black women, the scene felt all too familiar. Black motherhood is sometimes expected to hold the weight of the world, to be responsible not just for one's own physical children, but for others' children, as well as be a comfort and support to all white people who need them. Now, this is best characterized in the symbol of the mammy figure. Now, we will all recognize her. She's often depicted as a curvy Black woman, often middle-aged, wearing an apron and speaking with a southern drawl. And she is often employed, well, she's always employed by a white family. She is there for the children's every physical and emotional need. She is there for the parents' every physical and emotional need. She is fiercely loyal and has no thoughts for her own welfare. She's utterly devoted to their service. But this mammy is not the great protector of her own family. She's a martyr who lays down her life for white families. Black mothers don't have to have given birth to be pigeonholed into the mammy stereotype. The Momala incident on Drew Barrymore's show was reminiscent of a similar happening more than 25 years before that. In 1998, John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, was a guest on Oprah Winfrey's hit show and took relationship questions from the audience. A writer recalls what happened next after these questions. In response to an audience member's distress, he instructed Miss Winfrey, one of the world's most powerful women in the television industry, to give the woman a hug. He went on to say, Oprah's going to be your mommy. She's the mother of America. That's why she didn't have time for her own kids. She's taking care of all the other lost children. Now, examples of this racist stereotype in films and literature include Aunt Chloe in Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, in Hattie McDaniel's character in Gone with the Wind that's pictured here, who's literally named just Mammy, no other name, the ever-present help to Scarlett O'Hara. And in Gone with the Wind, there's no mention of Mammy's own children, whether they are dead or alive. What's particularly fascinating to note about the Mammy figures is that she never actually existed. Mammies never actually existed, because you would have been very unlikely to find older, curvy, enslaved women as house slaves. These were much more likely to be light-skinned teenage girls. Enslaved people lived in such brutal conditions that they were very unlikely to reach middle-aged anyway, nor could they have been fat. And white families clearly preferred to have light-skinned enslaved women rather than what they perceived as ugly, dark-skinned women in their homes. And this myth, the mammy myth, led artist Andy Warhol to include a pop art image of a mammy in his 1981 Myth series, alongside characters such as Mickey Mouse, Father Christmas, and Superman. Now, right from the moment they conceive, Black mothers continue to face significant disparities. In the UK and in the US, they are much more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. They're more likely to experience life-threatening conditions like preeclampsia and blood clots and postpartum hemorrhage, and pregnancy-related complications such as preterm birth and low birth weight. Black women are also more likely to face poor maternal health outcomes during pregnancy and birth. The burden of issues Black mothers face is exacerbated by the stereotyping, unconscious bias, and racism they experience within the healthcare system. Sandra Igwe, who founded an organisation called the Motherhood Group, which explores Black maternal health, said, many Black women feel unseen, unheard, and misunderstood by medical professionals. Black women also disproportionately experience stressors like the weight of systemic racism. All of this compounds the already overwhelming transition to motherhood. Now, I am still mentally recovering from my own horrific experience giving birth the first time round. I felt violated and brutalised, like no one was listening to me. I felt like I didn't have a voice, like I didn't exist. Now, a study of birth trauma released in May 2024 showed that one of the things that makes giving birth in the UK so difficult for all women, and especially Black women, was the feeling that their concerns were not being listened to. For many women, the labour ward is a profoundly unloving place. It's a place that doesn't live up to the sepia-tinged images of giving birth to our children we've come to believe are the norm. Now, when I visited Our Lady of Miracles in Orléans in France, the Black Madonna that was pictured earlier, I watched how Black woman after Black woman came to pray at her feet. They chose her and that place rather than the white representations of motherhood they saw in the big cathedral just a few steps away. Maybe they felt drawn to her because the Blessed Virgin is a woman who understands what it is to be a woman in a broken world. But maybe, more than that, it was the Black Madonna's blackness, along with her womanhood, that made them feel safe in her presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Chine. That was wonderful. And